Hi, it's Tim Hagen from Progress Coaching, and we're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to talk about a story, an actual story from one of our clients, and I'm going to change the names and the pictures to protect the innocent because it's kind of a personal story. And it's one that when we get involved with our clients, we train leaders how to coach, but we also get very heavily involved. What would you do in this situation? I've got this employee who does XYZ. What do I do? And those are situations that don't have 100% equations. And what I mean by that is people often will say, I've got this person resistant to feedback. How do I handle it so I don't make a mistake? You only control 50% of the equation. The other 50% is their reception. And if 85% of people lack self-awareness, according to Tasha Eurich in her book, Insights, which is a great book, by the way, the fact of the matter is we're already starting behind the eight ball, so to speak. So what I'm going to do is illustrate this story. It's highly personal. Now, ladies, if you're attending this and watching this, I'm going to be careful. Now, remember, I was brought up by a single mom. I have a daughter. I have a wife I've been with for 36 years, been together for 41. But I would just share with you because there's some touchy spots in here that I'm certainly not the expert. And so the reason I kind of preempt that is it's a very personal story for women that I don't think we as men can really empathize with and quite frankly fully understand. I often make the joke to people like, a man should give birth. The closest I can get is I've got the body of a pregnant woman. That's about as much as I can participate. So what I'm going to bring up are some things that I don't really have contextual understanding yet. Woman to woman, this story conjured up a real challenge. So let me walk you through it. So first of all, leaders have to coach. And I go back to this all the time. Leaders have to coach. And when they coach, they have to schedule time with their people. They have to drive them in terms of what they're presently doing and maybe futuristically where they want to go. That's fundamentally why we need to coach. Now, often, I'll make the joke when people say, well, I don't have time to coach. And, I'm really, very, very busy and our industry is different. I get it all the time. And I always ask this question. I encourage you to steal it. So what do you do when you have to interview? And you get this puzzled look. Well, what do you mean? I said, well, you don't have any time. Who does the interviewing for your staff? Well, I do. I said, so you do have time. And it's a choice. And usually the choice is made to hide behind I don't have time, which is the mask for the real reasons. They don't know what to do and they don't know what to say. Case in point, this story. So I want you to meet Sarah. She is a nervous leader of leaders. She doesn't like conflict. Now, this is not the real name. And I'm going to bring up a quick picture here. This is a younger leader, and this person is going to be coaching somebody that is older than her, and it's a very touchy subject. So the thing that's so interesting about this is it really conjures up a really challenging situation. And like most things when it comes to coaching, they're very situationally driven. Now, Sarah has to coach someone by the name of Jessica. Jessica is a tenured employee, a little bit older. Sorry about that. And she is certainly not representing this in this picture, but Sarah, the younger leader, came to me and said, I'm getting complaints about her dress code. This is why, ladies, I brought this up very sensitively, or at least hopefully sensitively. And she said she really does not dress appropriate for our work environment. Now, this happens to be a high-end consulting firm and very professional. They wear suits and ties. Men do every day. Women dress, professionally every single day. And so she is a person who's tenured, who's quite frankly, not dressing appropriately according to the younger manager. Now, I'm going to say some things that are going to potentially rub people the wrong way. The younger manager is very attractive. She's very thin. The older employee who reports to this younger manager is a little bit heavier set. I'm heavy set. I'm not making a judgment or a label, but it conjures up. How's that going to be received from someone who's really thin and dresses great? That's going to be like salt in a wound. There's a lot of risk I would love to have you put your comments in. And the reason I'm kind of chuckling is the younger leader, she was, in this case, Sarah, and I'm changing the names to protect the innocent, was so nervous to have this conversation. So I said, okay, I want you to think about this over the weekend. And I said, number one, what you don't prevent, you permit. You cannot complain about her dress code unless you address it. She said, that's true. And I said, number two, if you have conversations with her, you're also protecting her. You're not judging her. You're not labeling her. You're not admonishing her. You're not saying she looks terrible or she dresses terrible. It's just inappropriate. It's not professional. Other people have said something which you also can't bring up. And I remember the young manager saying, why can't I bring it up? I said, because that'll give you the comfort to bring it up. That person's going to think about the three people who said it. She's going to completely forget she's not dressing appropriately. It has to come from you at some point. So we get back together Monday and she's even more nervous. And I said, look, and this is a younger manager who is just getting going, coaching other leaders, coaching employees, and very, very, very gifted. I want to be very clear, very gifted. This is a mountain in her mind that she has to climb over. So I said something to her, was interesting, and we're very close. And I said, what if I did the coaching for you? And she looks at me, she goes, well, you don't even know her. And I said, that's okay. What if you said I was just doing some coaching interviews just to kind of find out, to serve as a bridge for you? And, we'll just kind of dabble in Tim's just going to dabble into some of the things we're doing, nothing major. And we just tell her that we're talking to everybody and, have some other conversations to kind of not draw attention to this. And she said, okay, well, how are you going to bring this up? I said, I'm not. And for those of you listening, what I'm about to share comes off extremely confident and I hope not arrogant, but I looked at her, I said, I'm not. I'm going to get her to bring it up. She said, how are you going to do that? And what I want you to think about are two forks in the road. Situationally, how do I develop this? Or how do I address this? That's nerve-wracking. I would never in a million years come out to a woman and say, you dress inappropriately. That is not my place. That's why earlier I was trying to be really sensitive. The other fork in the road is my coaching skills. And I looked at the younger manager and I said, Sarah, look, I'm going to share something with you. I will get her to bring it up. She goes, how can you say that? I said, I'm going to say something to you that's going to come off really wrong. And it's going to come off a little bit arrogant, a little self-righteous. I have extreme confidence in my coaching skills. And I said, I'm going to build that bridge for you. Right now, you're just not even walking over the water. You're not even going near the water. I'm going to build the bridge for you. And then you have to take the ball from me and you have to run with it. Are you cool with that? She said, well, yeah, sure. So I meet with Jessica and we sit down and I said, as Sarah told you, we're just meeting with everybody. And I said, so what do you love about what you're currently doing? She had no problem answering it. And she said, let me just make another comment to you. She said, I love this consulting firm. I love this company. I've been here 17 years. And she just goes on. Now, in my experience, when you meet people, you tend to pick up some people reading skills. This was genuine and authentic. So what's running through my mind right now is, wow, everybody should have this employee. Yet it taught me that younger manager saw her walk in the hall, trigger, she's dressed like that again. Oh my gosh. And she didn't know what to do. And so I looked at this, employee, Jessica, the older employee who reports to the younger manager. And I said, so what's your next step? She goes, what do you mean? I said, what's your next step? What does that look like to you? She goes, I don't know. It's really funny you asked that. I haven't given that a lot of thought. I go, what would you love to be doing that maybe you're not doing at all now, or maybe not enough of? And she just sat there and she goes, I really don't know. And we both started chuckling. I said, let's do this. Why don't we get back together Monday? Are you cool with that? She goes, well, I thought you were meeting with this once. I said, look, Jessica, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I said, I'd love to meet with you a couple more times if you're cool with it. I was casual. I was friendly. Anybody who knows me, I crack jokes. I didn't come out guns a-blazing saying, you dress like crap. You need a lot of help. I got to situationally fix you. And that's what happens with coaching. We tend to want to use it as an apparatus to fix something or to fix somebody. That's not the purpose of coaching. The coaching is the main objective is to get that person to become self-aware and take action on what they see. So we got back together and she said, I thought a lot about our last conversation. She said, I would really like to go into this one department, but I'd like to be a level above what I'm currently doing. I said, well, why a level above? And she said, I did a little bit of research. Great employee, loves the company. Let's not forget that. And she said, they work more with data and analytics. That's kind of my bread and butter. And I've gotten away from that. I hadn't really thought about it till you brought it up, the power of questions. So as the conversation went on and I said, well, have you identified that gap between now and, or between where you're at now and where you want to go? And she said, I really haven't. I said, do you know someone in that department? She said, yeah, I know a guy who's very good friends with me. And I said, I think I could take him out for lunch and kind of identify that. I said, well, let's make that our third conversation. So all of a sudden she ends up coming back and she's identified tactical things, knowledge, where she needs additional training, skill sets. And I said, and I want you to hear this. This is where you get into some sensitive areas. I go, so when you go higher up in the organization and someone's watching you, what are people expecting from you at that level versus the level you're at now? And she goes, boy, that's interesting. She said, I think as you go higher up in this organization, there's an air of more professionalism required. I said, oh, what does that mean? I don't know what you mean. I kind of knew what you meant, but I played a little dumb. She said, we're a very professional company and it's really something that, we have to take very seriously as employees. I said, oh, okay. I said, well, what does that mean for you? And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, what do you think you do really well? And what's that one area that, or two areas that, I probably need to raise my game if I'm going to reach that level? Remember, I'm asking questions in reaction to what she has brought up. She said, yeah, I've thought a lot about that. I would probably have to, really raise my game in some areas. I said, oh, like what? She said, at that level, there's a lot of public speaking. I said, oh, so presentation. And she said, yeah. I said, giving presentation and also your presentation. She said, yeah, my presentation too. And I said, well, what does that mean to you in terms of presentation, in terms of what you've seen? She said, well, there's some other women. The door opens. There are some other women in that area that are really ultra professional. I mean, quite frankly, Tim, she goes, it's a little intimidating. I said, well, what are they representing that intimidates you? She said, they look great. Their presentation skills are fantastic. They're dressed to the hilt. I said, what do you mean dressed to the hilt? I'm a guy. We're dumb, She starts laughing. She goes, they just look phenomenal. And that's intimidating to me as a woman. And I said, well, obviously I can't help you. I'd love to go shopping with you, but I think we'd look really dumb looking at women's clothes together. And she just breaks out laughing. I go, I have an idea for you. And I'd love to do it between our next coaching session. She said, sure. What is it? I said, is there someone inside the company that you could go be vulnerable with comfortably, and say, I've got my eye on an opportunity. I need to raise my game in your public speaking because I didn't want to hone in on just the physical presentation. I said I wanted to hone in on her presentation skills, her speaking skills, how she presents herself, and kind of put it all into one wrap, if you will. And she said, yeah, I've got someone in another department that I think I could trust. And I said, I had somebody do something for me years ago, and it's kind of humbling. And she said, what's that? I'm kind of a casual guy. I'm wearing a t-shirt right now. I'm a kind of a casual guy. Truth be told, if I was in shorts and sweats every day, I'd be thrilled. And she started laughing. I said, I got a job at IBM right out of college. I didn't know how to tie a tie. My interview, I had two guys literally come to the YMCA where I was working and dress me. And she goes, are you serious? I go, I didn't know how to tie a tie. And I said, it would behoove you to see if this person would even go shopping with you. And she goes, oh, that's a great idea. Well, 2 weeks later, I get a call from Sarah, the younger leader. She goes, what did you do? I said, what are you talking about? I had no clue. I want to be honest. I had no clue. She said, Jessica came into my office today and she looked like $1 million. And I started smiling. I said, yeah, it was kind of her learning project. She went shopping with someone. She goes, how did you tell her to do that? I go, I never tell anyone what to do. I got her to self-discover and come up with her own actions. That's why we coach. So I walked the younger manager, Sarah, through my methodology. I didn't rush to judgment. I didn't rush to fix. I started off with, what do you love about your job? She loved her job. And then she also offered, I love this company. You don't want to lose an employee like that. Yet if you come out guns a-blazing, you dress like crap, it's inappropriate. Cut it out. You could have someone go to the door unnecessarily. So when we started to find out where she wanted to go, and I said, what does that look like to you? What do you think you need to do differently than you're doing now? And she said, presentation. I said, what do you mean presentation? Well, I got to give a lot of presentations at that level. And some of the people who do it now are intimidating. Oh, how are they intimidating? Well, the way they dress, the way they carry themselves. What do you mean the way they carry themselves? What do you mean by the way they dress? Well, they look like $1 million. I said, oh, that's interesting. I said, have you thought about looking into something like that? Who's someone inside the company that could help you? And lo and behold, I want to be very clear with everybody. My wife always gets mad at me when we have a situation at a restaurant or something. I don't go up and yell and scream at people because our table's still waiting, or our service is slow, or we don't have a great waiter or waitress. I have a conversation. And my great friend, Mike Carroll, who he and I are lucky enough, we're competitors, but great friends. It's a weird friendship. He has a company called Intelligent Conversations. He works with sales. And he and I always talk about this, how we can just go into any situation and just handle it. And what I mean by that is it's not foolproof. Do I make mistakes? Oh my gosh, all the time. But I knew from guy to woman, that's a sensitive subject. That is not a place. Because if that had come from me in the first session, I had no right to do that. I actually never brought it up. Number two, I kind of see where this, lady was in a very precarious position. So once we got that going, I said, okay, here's what you need to do, Sarah. Now you got to acknowledge that and say, man, Jessica, you look fantastic. You know what? What's gotten into you? You look phenomenal. God, it's intimidating. Praise her. That conditions the behavior. Then meet with her weekly and only focus on the good things. See, what had happened in this conversation is Sarah had been so steadfast, had been so focused on the inappropriate dress code being presented, she couldn't see anything else. It became her trigger. I said, then after you meet with her weekly and you're focusing on all the good things that she's doing, ask her what-driven questions and demonstrate active listening. Here's what I've heard you say. And about 2 months later, I get this call, and it's from the young manager, Sarah, and she said, it's like day and night difference. Now, some of you might be saying, well, wait a minute. You didn't really address the dress code head on. No, I didn't. One, I didn't have the right. Number two, I ascertained Sarah was nervous. Had she handled it, she would have been squeamish in doing so. I think she would have hid behind, well, 3 people told me. Well, Jessica would have focused on who were the 3 people. Why didn't they come to me? And would have diverted her from the issue. So what we started out with, the things that she loves about her job. Then she offered up the things she loves about the company. I got this rush of, okay, let's not pinpoint this thing right away. We've got a really good, devoted, loyal employee who loves her company. How often do we hear that today? Only 29% of people, according to Gallup, are actively engaged. 71% are neutral or actively disengaged. So think about that. She loves her employer. We don't want to lose her. So we have to be sensitive. So by the time we started out with the strengths and the things she loves and what's that next step, the other thing that we teach in our methodology called QALMS, QALMS, the motivator, the M, is where does that person want to go, whether it's inside the job intrinsically or outside the job extrinsically. She wanted to get more into data and analytics. She had completely forgotten until somebody asked her. So here's the challenge that we have as leaders. We have to coach. We either coach them or we leave them. Now, the leave them is really a two-sided coin. They either leave us or we leave them mentally. So when somebody says to me, I don't have time to coach, I always laugh at that. How the hell are you going to do the end of the year review? Is it just going to be based on numbers? It'll come off so impersonal, that person will mentally leave you in 2 seconds. So what we have to do more than anything is to engage and start with the good stuff. What do you like? What do you love? What's that next step for you? I knew eventually that Jessica was going to open the door for me when she said the people doing the presentations were intimidating. Well, how so? Well, the way they present themselves. I said, what does that mean? I'm not sure. She said, well, their presentation skills, the way they look. What do you mean the way they look? Oh, they're just dressed phenomenal. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, it's intimidating. I said, oh, that's interesting. I said, as a guy, we're not smart enough to think that way. And I used a little humor to lower her defenses. And then I said, well, what do you think you need to do? Is there someone that you could maybe reach out to from woman to woman? She said, yeah, I've got someone in another department. I said, what if you even went shopping? I don't want to go with you. I think we look silly together. She breaks out laughing together. Together, we started laughing. It's a very casual conversation. It isn't, I got to go in and fix this person. So remember, when we're coaching, what we're doing is we're navigating conversations. We're not going in to fix. That's the difference. That's why we coach. And once you develop those skills, I even had one a couple of years ago where somebody said, I've got to have a conversation with somebody who has body odor. It was on a shop floor of a manufacturing plant. I said, how bad is it? She goes, it's awful. I go, okay, well, you probably have to do something. It's probably affecting other people. And so I taught her this thing called walking the pier. It's a parallel coaching methodology. She comes back. She said, the guy was humiliated, but he came back and said, well, thank you, because we use this I want to protect you approach. I won't get details of the methodology. So again, when you learn all these conversational skills, guess what happens, everybody? You can navigate just about any situation. But if you go into fix people or fix situations, that's called a management directive. And sometimes we need to do that. But when we're coaching people, can you imagine if that young leader came out guns a-blazing and saying, I just wanted to talk to you, you're dressed inappropriately. And, people around here are really getting upset. They find it offensive. Where would that woman mentally go? Now, till this day, they have a great relationship. I have a great relationship with both. And it's so interesting to look back at that situation. It was a number of years ago. That conversation not handled well by me or the leader could have been devastating to not only the person, but maybe even the organization. That's why we need to coach. And if we develop those navigation skills, knowing, not trying to steer the conversation, but reacting to what's being said, keeping an eye on the thing we need to address at some level without rushing it and doing it in such a way that someone self-discovers, that's what a great coach hopefully does. Now, I'm not saying I'm a great coach. What I'm saying is I was very comfortable in that situation. I totally get the younger leader, woman to woman, being totally uncomfortable, because I kept thinking to myself, you look fantastic. You dress to the hilt. I mean, she's striking. She walks in a room. She's dressed beautifully and professional presence. The woman who reported to her didn't at the time. She does now. And so that could have conjured up a challenge there as well. What's the right answer? Sometimes there isn't a right answer. Is there a framework of a pretty good approach? Hopefully you got that out of this presentation. Give us your comments in the comment section. Did this help at all? And so hopefully I navigated, told you a good story, but more importantly, gave you some of the coaching techniques. When I start coaching people, I always start with, what do you love? What do you like? What do you dislike about your present situation? Where would you like to go? What would you love to be doing? What would you like to be doing? What would you dislike to be doing or potentially not be doing as much? And you get a good understanding of their present, where they want to go, and then you start to uncover some gaps. And that's what opens up the door of opportunity for self-discovery. And more importantly, is equally as importantly, I would say even more importantly, self-awareness. Thanks, everybody. I hope this helped.